So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Michel Barnier having to kind of correct the record on the trade and cooperation agreement. I am a bit wary because it does look like Robert Peston has made up a quote here from this video. It's one I want to get to because it kind of should dispel some of the misinformation around the review of the trade and cooperation agreement, because even I've made mistakes in some of the phrasing I've used regarding this review, technical review.
Can I just ask you about Keir Starmer's policy? He says that because there's a review of the free trade agreement in 2025, he thinks that's a moment to renegotiate the free trade agreement. But that's not what's planned, is it?
Are you sure that the Keir Starmer speak about the renegotiation of the trade agreement?
Yep, that's what he says.
So, I don't know where his source is on this because I haven't seen it regarding a renegotiation. He said, he wants to get a better deal. He wants to get a veterinary agreement. And we kind of discussed some of the problems around what Starmer has said and some of the impossibilities around getting an equivalency deal. But I don't know if Starmer said they're going to go for a renegotiation. I've not seen a wider coverage of this either, of this supposed statement. So, I think journalists should be careful, given the fact that Kay Burley made up a quote as well, and she, Sky News had to kind of retract it. I do wonder what Robert Peston's actual sourcing is here, not to doubt his credibility as a so-called journalist. I don't think very highly of him anyways, but I do hope that, I don't want that quote to be real, but I hope he's got good sourcing on it. That's all I'm going to say.
Because as I understand it, it's just a technical review.
I listen his speech speaking about the improvement of the relations between UK and EU.
Improvement, but he talks about improving the free trade agreement, and
we have to.
That's what I mean there. He kind of says, well, Starmer has talked about improving the free trade agreement, which is very different to a renegotiation.
Evaluate and to review in 2026.
So what does that mean?
That means that we have.
I think there's a misunderstanding on what's his name. I think Peston misunderstood what Starmer said. To be honest,
to see if it's work or not. But to be frank, there is no room for any kind of renegotiation on the substance.
Yeah.
Because, as I always say during all the negotiations, from the day one to the last day, there is no room for any kind of unraveling of the single market. So that means that we can, if this point is very clear, we can improve
some of the technical details.
Technical details, for instance, the veterinary relations to facilitate the relation and the export for animals or vegetables. But on the substance,
fundamental.
There is no. We have to be out or in. And let me record that the UK could have choose to stay in the custom union or to stay in single market as Norway. The choice of the UK was to leave everything, and it was his choice, not our choice.
And before any rejoiners step in and say, the UK could have stayed in the single market. Yeah, we could have stayed whilst we were members. I'm sure they could have come up with some sort of arrangement. But the problem is now we're out and there's no love for a former member. There probably would have been for a current member. They probably could have made some sort of allocation for us to stay in the single market, but we didn't want that because we didn't want to be a rule taker. We wanted to be a rule maker. Well, we don't really make the rules now anyways, because when you're an export, you adhere to the country or the place you are exporting to. So we've not really gotten very far, have we?
But
so there's no fudge, there's no compromise around any of this.
No, there is no compromise about the rule of the single market, which is, let me recall the fact that the single market is much more than a free trade zone. The single market is a kind of ecosystem, a complete ecosystem with common norms, standards, regulations, supervision, and jurisdictions. So we have to be out or in. But coming back to the relation between UK and EU, there is lots of issues where we can improve the relations.
So, there are parts where we can improve the trade agreement, but it depends on both sides. Some things like the fishing agreement are up for a review as well, I believe. But, the idea that we can pair this kind of review with a security agreement, I think it's just fanciful thinking, honestly. Especially given that the EU, certain EU members have started rearming anyways. Do they really even need us for such a security agreement? I know we're one of the most powerful militaries in Europe, but given the fact the British military is in a complete state of disarray, I don't know how useful we are going to be in a sense. Maybe when the day, Germany finally wakes up and realizes that they do need to be a military power again, despite what happened in the past. Japan have realized that despite what they did in the past. They do need to have a strong military to be a regional ally to certain smaller countries, as well as a good international ally. I think Germany is kind of hopefully realizing the same thing, that despite what happened in the past, the only reason that happened was because you let bad actors get in the way, not just because you had a strong military. So, I don't know how useful will even be in security agreements, especially since we are still the laundromat of Russian money to an extent. So I'm glad Barnier kind of come out and said this. Again, it feels like he's a broken record on this. It feels like I'm a broken record on this. But it's up for review. Maybe during the next, after this review, maybe we can get something better. But again, we got a very bare bones free trade agreement, but there's no trust with us. At least other countries like the Canadians have a lot of trust with the EU. New Zealand will have a lot of trust with the EU. Also, the UK-Australia deal looks like it's failed, with Brexiteers blaming the EU for that, which is kind of tragic. But yeah, he's a broken record on this. I am as well. But the TCA is up for review, and I don't know why Robert Peston kind of seemingly made something up there. Maybe his source is the great Senator Armstrong. I don't know, but I think journalists should have to clue themselves up. You might have a journalism degree, but it doesn't give you any real background on politics, big man. And given that you're ITV's top correspondent, maybe it's time to do some research, or get your team to actually do some research. Because if he has made up what Starmer said, that's just poor journalism on his part. But I'm not accusing him of that, because that you get into slander territory, defamationary territory. But if he hasn't done his research, he should really be doing so. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.